Welcome, Deronda here with Foods 101. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a no-knead crusty white bread. And you can keep this bread dough in your refrigerator up to 7 days. And just take handfuls at a time, put it on a baking sheet, and you have fresh bread all week long. So it's an amazing recipe, and I got the recipe from the King Arthur Flour Company, and their recipe was inspired by a book called Artisan Bread in 5 minutes a day. The ingredients you're going to need is 6.5 to 7.5 cups of your King Arthur flour, unbleached, all-purpose flour. And I'll explain why we have a range of measurements later on here in the video. You're going to need 1.5 tablespoons of your rapid rise instant yeast. These come in little packets, and I measure them into 1.5 tablespoons. You're going to need 3 cups of lukewarm water, and that means water, when you touch it, it's just warm to the touch. If it's too hot, it's going to kill your yeast. If it's too cool, your yeast isn't going to rise. So very important, it's just warm to the touch. Also, you're going to need 1 tablespoon of kosher salt. Now, let me show you how I'm going to put this together. In a very large bucket, that's a plastic bucket, as you see right here, I'm measuring 6.5 cups of flour in here. Now, if you're wondering where I got this bucket, I purchased it for $1 at Walmart in their baking section. This is what their buttercream comes in. It's perfect for making this bread in. They have a lid on it, which has a lovely little seal in here that'll keep this dough fresh all week long in your refrigerator. Now, regarding the 6.5 cups to the 7.5 cups of flour, if you're just dipping your measuring cup right in here into your flour bag, you want to make sure you're going to take a spoon and you're going to get all the air pockets out. Make sure you have no air pockets there in your measuring cup. Use the end of your spoon. Go ahead and have a lovely flat surface here on your 1 cup measure and pour it in here with the rest of your flour. If you had sifted this flour and it was really super light and you were just sprinkling it in like this, and then you were scraping off the top, then you're going to use 7.5 cups of flour. But in all reality, 32 ounces of flour is what you're going to need for this bread, because the flour and the water ratio are very important. Next, I'm going to add in my yeast. I've cut the top of one of the little envelopes of my yeast here, and I'm adding it into 1 tablespoon measurement, 1.5 tablespoons right here into your flour. And you're going to add your kosher salt. And next we're going to incorporate this with a large whisk before we add the water. That looks pretty well incorporated, and make sure you get the salt and the yeast very well distributed evenly in with the flour. Now, for the lukewarm water, add it all in at once and give it a lovely stirring. It's going to be a sticky dough, but this plastic bucket will keep it from sticking to the sides of your container here. All right, and you want to stir it for about 60 seconds. Mercy, I can smell that fabulous yeast. Okay, so it's going to be a little sticky, but that's the way it should be. Now I'm having to get in there with my hands and punch it down a little bit, so that's about perfect. To the top of this, we're going to add a lovely, nice fitting lid, and we're going to put this in a really nice warm area so this dough can rise for the next 2 hours. After 2 hours of rising, that dough smells absolutely fantastic. You want at least an 8-quart container. I didn't tell you that earlier here in the video, but you want it to have plenty of time to rise. Now I'm going to cover it, and you see, I mean, that's at least about 6 inches up that it's rised up here in our plastic bucket. Now I'm going to cover this without doing anything to it, and I'm going to put this in the refrigerator. You want to seal the sides. I'm going to put this in the refrigerator overnight, and I'll be back tomorrow to show you how we're going to make those bread loaves. I've got my bread in the refrigerator. It's been in there for 2 days, and I've taken an 18 by 12 inch cookie sheet or baking pan, and I've lined it with parchment paper. I like the parchment paper That way I can just pull my bread off after it bakes, and I can let it sit here on the cookie sheet and let it rise, let it bake, and I'm not going to have much of a cleanup at all. In the refrigerator, I'm going to get the dough out, and I'm just going to reach down in here. You can see how that just kind of pulls loose from the plastic bucket here. And I'm going to grab about the size of a grapefruit. It's about 16 ounces of dough. I'm going to just flour the surface a little bit. And I'm going to roll my dough around. Now, you don't want to roll it too much. You don't need to. And you must remember, the longer you keep this dough in the refrigerator, by the end of day 5 or 6, you're going to more or less get a sourdough bread out of this. Now, I'm going to make 2 loaves right now. I'm going to make a sort of like an oblong baguette bread, just like this. You want to make sure you shake off the excess flour. And now I'm going to put it right over here on the cookie sheet, and I'm going to let it rise. I'm going to take another piece of dough right here, just dig in, and let me tell you, this is some fantastic dough. It's very chilled, and the bread that you're not using today, like here, we're going to cover it back up and put it in the refrigerator immediately, because it's going to start rising on you if you don't. And as your bread sits in the refrigerator, it's going to rise and fall. It's going to rise and fall over the days you have it in there. All right, so this is absolutely perfect. And let me get that flour out of the way, and I'll bring back that baking pan. And now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to add our round piece of dough right here. So it's going to look like this. On the top, you're going to sprinkle a little bit of flour. This will keep the dough from drying out. It'll help keep the dough from drying out. And now we're just going to cover this, and I use paper towels. You're going to put this in a draft-free warm area for the next 60 minutes to an hour and a half, so they can rise. And I'll be back and I'm going to show you how we're going to bake them. My bread has been rising for 2 hours, and look how beautiful those are. Let me hold on to that parchment paper. But as you can see, that's the perfect size we're wanting on this bread. And listen, when you're trying to shape your bread, don't fuss over it. Just go ahead and put it on here the way you can. I've got my oven preheating to 450 degrees. I'm going to take a sharp paring knife, and I'm going to make 3 slits here, about 1/4 of an inch thick, into the bread. If you have a razor blade, you can do that too. It may inflate a little bit, but that's all right, because it'll pop right back up. Now, I've got a pan, a shallow pan, on the bottom rack of the oven, because that's where I'm going to add a cup of water. So in the oven these go. So here they go on the top rack, and you see I have a bottom rack under there, and I'm going to add 1 cup of water, and it's going to steam, and that's exactly what we want. And we're going to shut the oven to hold in that steam. That's what's going to make that bread lovely and crispy on the outside. Bread has baked for 35 minutes. Looky there. I'm going to take it off the parchment paper. We'll just pull it, well, off the baking pan. I just had to come down here and show you how beautiful these loaves are. Oh my goodness, and if you could be in my kitchen and smell how delicious it is. Oh, I can't wait to dig in. I'll be back in a second. Gotta cut into one of these. I'm moving it off the cooling rack. I've got a serrated knife here that I love to use to cut into it. See the little teeth there? That makes all the difference in the world. And now, I want you to listen to the outside. Just like what you want to hear. It's going to be lovely and crispy on the outside. And let's see what the inside's going to look like. Ooh, yeah. It's got that lovely crunch. Oh my goodness. Look how fantastic that is. Oh my goodness. Perfect with your eggs over easy in the morning. Lovely to eat with any sort of lunch or dinner. Looky there. Ooh, and it's still warm. Gotta give it a try. Just really can't wait to dig in. And it is warm, boys and girls. Oh my goodness. Lovely and crunchy on the outside. It's got this moist yeast, soft bread on the inside. It's a winner, y'all. Big thanks to King Arthur Bread for the recipe, and a big thanks for Zoe and Jeff for the inspiration from their book. Hey y'all, I'm Deronda with Foods 101. Give me thumbs up, leave me a comment, and I'll catch you next time.